firstly, thank you to those of you who are joining us now, and for those of you who are going to watch this on recording, welcome to our webinar. Today we are going to be discussing medical revalidation. By way of introduction, I'll just introduce myself. I won't introduce the others from SARD at the moment, but I'm Phil Bottle. I'm one of the co-founders and the managing director of SARD. I worked in the NHS myself for a number of years as head of learning and development in a mental health and community trust and also an acute trust. So just a couple of things in terms of housekeeping for those of you on this call, just to make sure everyone's aware, this is an information session. It's not a training session. It is being recorded. So if you are on camera, you may very well be one of the stars of the show. If you wish to not be, then obviously you can make sure your camera is turned off. And if you could make sure that your microphone is muted during the actual webinar itself. We have time at the end for questions. So if there's anything you want to ask or explore further, then we will make time towards the end of the session. So what is it we're going to discuss today? So in terms of the agenda, we've got about an hour. It should probably take a little bit less than that. I'm just going to briefly discuss a little bit about us, who we are, where we come from, and how we operate. Then I'm going to talk about some process changes in terms of the world of medical revalidation and appraisal and show you how we've responded to those. We're then going to go through some of the issues that people talk to us about when we're having our sort of initial discovery sessions with potential clients. They often tell us about their current issues with processes or systems that they've got. So instead of going through every part of the system, which is not achievable in an hour to sort of really do it justice, we're going to focus on the main areas that people struggle with and show you again how we've created solutions for those. And then we're going to talk about one of the biggest barriers to people moving to any new system, which is around the transition. And I'll talk you through how we make it simple and how our experience means that it is as pain-free as we can possibly make it, and just discuss those sort of key concepts of how we operate. And then finally, some opportunities for some questions. So a little bit about us. This is for those of you that have not worked with us previously or we've not had meetings before, just to give you sort of a flavour of where we come from and how we operate. And I actually think that's really key when you're looking at systems and how they operate. Is it's not just about what the features and functionalities are of those systems. It's also about how the provider reacts to changes, how agile they are, how responsive they are. So in terms of our story, just very briefly, we're 11 years old now. We're part owned by the NHS. We've got about 50 clients, 50,000 odd users. We look after 7 of the 10 Shelford Group trusts in various capacities with different modules. And we've currently got about a 94% retention rate, which is across the entirety of 11 years. And the reason why I mention the retention rate is because we work very hard to make sure that our systems and our support are exactly what our clients need, and therefore they don't wish to leave, because they understand that what we offer is a bit more than just features and functionality. In terms of our systems, so I'll go through some of this as I talk through some of the issues and solutions that we're dealing with. But what we offer is modular-based systems. The intuitive, accessible and configurable side of things I will go into in a little bit more detail. Interoperability is really key as well, and so is continuous development. It's about not just what we offer today, but when things change, as we see in one of the first sections, how we can react to that, and how we can ensure that those engaging with the system can do so in a way that matches the requirements. So we've got really 2 core pillars that underpin what we do, everything that we do essentially. One is great customer service and one is great technology. And again, I will go into some more detail about the support side of things and the technology side of things. It does speak to the idea of configurability of some aspects of our system, making sure that the system is well maintained, making sure that it matches, as I say, the requirements as they come in as process changes. And great customer service is essentially within our DNA. We've been providing it for 11 years, and I will show you some quotes in a minute which really describes the pedigree that we have within that area. So we have a number of products. Today we're going to focus on medical revalidation. This is less about me trying to sell people other modules. It's for two things. One, to make you aware that we do actually offer a fuller solution than just one module. But secondly, to explain that everything that you see in front of you has been built in partnership. So we don't build in isolation. We don't go away and decide what a trust or healthcare organisation needs in a system. We work with our partner trusts to build things that actually are meaningful and useful as we move forward. Our ecosystem, again, I mentioned interoperability, and I will go into a little bit more detail as I go through with this, but suffice to say, we don't believe in sort of maintaining our information in terms of sort of vendor lock-in, that you can only use one system or one module. We believe in open platforms, we believe in talking to other systems, and we believe that our systems should talk to each other. The information and the data that exists in these systems is useful in other areas. It's yours. It should be able to be accessible and for it to be used as you need to, and potentially, as I say, within other systems as you're gathering that data and utilising it in a certain way. So I mentioned the fact that I would put some sort of testimonial quotes in about our sort of service and our support. And these are actually relatively typical, the sort of positive responses that we get as we've sort of gone through the last 11 years. We've really always focused on customer support. And as you can see here, I think this individual would like us to work with other organisations to improve their customer service. Newcastle upon Tyne Consultant was definitely the best online support for anything I've ever used. And then my favourite, which is one of our retiring users, in fact she's retired now, which basically says, "You've truly been the best company that I've ever worked with." So we work really hard to make sure that we provide the right support and the right experience, and because of that we do form good relationships, or really positive relationships, with administrators, key stakeholders and end users. So on to the process changes. Now this isn't technically sort of the issues that we face when we're in the discovery process. This is with regards to what's actually changed in the world of medical appraisal and revalidation. And one of the first areas is this idea of the new MAG template. And there were a number of changes within it, but outside of just the system changes, actually the usefulness of the MAG form as a tool for people to actually be able to undertake their appraisal has changed. NHS England are steering doctors onto MAG 4.2 towards online services, so they no longer is it useful for you to be able to utilise the old MAG forms, but they're really pushing for organisations or individuals to be able to actually have a robust system that matches these. So our response to that was simply to make sure that our system did match that. And as you can see from this screenshot, the appraisal itself now matches the latest version, with all of the changes that were required within it. And this is just one of many examples of where we react across all of our modules to things that have changed. We find it in things like job planning when new contracts come out. And actually what we want to ensure is that those people using our systems can be confident that when processes change, when things change and that reflect how they undertake a particular process, that we're on the ball and that we've already done it. So that's one of the main changes within the system. Another one is around the under notice period. Obviously, as we're all still very aware, we've come out the other side of a pandemic and we're still feeling the effects of that. And one of the things that had changed was the under notice period, which has gone from 4 months to 12 months. to ensure that there's greater flexibility. There are some circumstances when that is less than 12 months, but again, we reacted to that within our system. And I know it may be very small, but down the bottom of this image, you can see that actually we've got revalidation due dates. All of these doctors are under notice and they span across up to sort of 12 months in time. So again, as with all of the sort of changes that come in, we react and ensure that our system matches what it should, which is exactly how we've operated really from the start of this. So there are a couple of major sort of changes to the system. What I wanted to sort of explore for the bulk of the rest of this session is actually around these issues and solutions. And I call them issues, but they're really, as I mentioned at the start, when we are in discovery, so when we talk to new potential clients now, we like to really understand what their situation is, what problems they're facing, are there any barriers, and how can we utilize our system to be able to overcome them. It is really important to remember, as I mentioned before, that when you buy a solution, you're not just purchasing a system, or at least you shouldn't be. It's really the service that goes with it, and how reactive and how agile an organization is to those changes. So what are the key things that we find out when we have these discovery meetings, and how do we overcome them? So I've broken these down into 6 core subject areas, and what I'm going to do from this point on within the webinar is I'll sort of flick between the slides and the system itself. So we'll get to see parts of the system, but as I mentioned before, we simply don't have time to go through all of the different areas. So we just want to pick up on the really key things. So those 6 core areas are, firstly, dependence on a single supplier. These tend to be barriers, which I'll go into. System performance and reliability, user engagement and functionality, then data management, admin and governance, then support. Finally, on this part, system evolution. So one of the main issues that we hear about a lot is the misconception that if you utilize a particular system provider and you want to change part of that, it's very difficult to do, that it probably won't work because systems don't talk to each other, that it can have a negative impact because all modules essentially are reliant upon each other. And as I mentioned, this is a misconception because for over a decade, our systems have essentially worked in harmony with other suppliers. Our focus as a provider ourselves is on best-in-class modules and interoperability. In a minute, I'll show you an example of how that actually worked in reality. And there can be numerous benefits to having multi-supplier solutions. Now, I do want to say we do offer a full suite, but it's also systems outside of the sort of workforce bracket that we primarily work in that have useful applications for the data that we have, or we have useful applications for the data that they have. And here's a sort of key example of that. So our ecosystem approach has led us to essentially working with a company called Think Learning. They deliver a learning management system. If you're in need of one, if what you've got isn't great, then I would strongly suggest that you look these guys up. They're a great organization. But what we've done is we've essentially worked with them to ensure that data can flow freely between our systems where it's relevant. So as you can see here, from our system, appraisal and revalidation compliance flows into their learning management system, so they're always aware of progress and how up to date someone is. And in return, all the statutory and mandatory training evidence that a doctor has undertaken will automatically go into our system, thus cutting down the requirement to go and search for information, to request it and then have to wait for it and then to upload it into the system. And really moving forward as a company, this is something that we're looking to explore further. Think Learning is not the only link we've made. It's just a really useful example. There are other organizations and other API links. So the idea of systems talking to each other that we're already either in progress with, have completed, or are in early discussions with. We really don't believe in this idea that you have to utilize, as I say, vendor lock-in proprietary systems. We don't believe in that. We believe that actually this data is yours, the system is yours, and you should be able to utilize that information as you see fit. Okay, so the next issue that we hear a lot about is system reliability. It's obviously something when you purchase any new system, you want to make sure that it works and that it works over a long period of time. And this can be numerous things, for example, system access, system uptime, and system maintenance. So with regards to access, as with any good supplier, you can access our system anywhere on an internet-enabled device. It's optimized for PC, laptops, tablets, smartphones. And that is to make sure that you can have accessibility on the go when you need to. Revalidation and appraisal is not something that people tend to sit down and do in one go. There'll be numerous occasions where they're interacting with the system, and we need to ensure that it is as easy and frictionless as possible. System uptime, again, important, because there will be random occasions when people are accessing this system. So we essentially offer a 99.9% uptime guarantee, and we have all the necessary policies and processes in place. And as you can see at the bottom, we are ISO 27001 certified. Now, system maintenance, so we'll touch on this a little bit further on, a bit more about our continuous development of the system, but this is as much about the infrastructure that we have in place to make sure that the systems we've got are up to date, that we fixed any bugs that appear, because even the greatest software companies in the world will suffer from bugs when things change, and we ensure that we make sure that that is maintained properly, so it's secure, your information is secure, the system is available, and it does exactly what it is supposed to do. So moving on to the user engagement and functionality side of things, and again, these are some of the things that we hear quite regularly when we speak to potential clients. There are concerns about lack of engagement. Now, I can't show you that in the system in terms of what our engagement levels are, but what I can do is just briefly tell you we had to re-tender for a system with one of our clients not so long ago, and within the tender document it talked about their current engagement appraisal rates, which was at 99%, which was well within the top 5% of all trusts in the country. And why that's significant is because the supplier of that system before this tender was us, and prior to us coming in, engagement levels were fairly low. There's always a concern, especially around transition, that it's something new and people won't engage. In our experience, the opposite is true. If a system is simple, well thought out, well supported, engagement levels actually start to increase. And that's something that obviously all trusts want. You need people engaging before you can start focusing on quality and how sort of useful a system is. That's also something around the engagement, which is also really key, is making sure that it's an intuitive guide. There's intuitive design, step-by-step guide. And then you have other areas which are again important, and I will take us to the system and show you some of these in a second. So visibility of progress, you know, where am I at? What do I need to do next? That's really key. You need to be able to help people that are engaging within a system over a long period of time to be able to tell them what's happened, what do you need to do, has something changed. Historical data as well, that's an issue both for the end user, but also in transition. You know, what's going to happen to all the data that I've had on a previous system? Well, as I'll show you shortly, that information is available to the end users, it is available to the administrators, and we will ensure that all of that legacy data is within the system. Configurability, I'll show you the configurability in our portfolio. And finally, one of the areas is about the sign-off process. And all of our sign-off processes take place online. There's notifications, so individuals will know what they're required to do. Administrators will know who's done what. So if someone signs something off or they haven't, so you can find any sort of blockages. So let's have a brief look at the systems itself. So in terms of the intuitive design, visibility, and step-by-step guides, all of our users have a dashboard, which is what you're looking at now. It clearly talks to you about your current progress, what you need to do next, where you need to go. It gives you very clear information about your dates. Are you up to date? Are you coming to a point where you need to renew? It provides you with your details of who are in the trust to ensure that that's accurate, notifications of what's changed within the system, if anything has changed, if someone has signed something off, if evidence has been uploaded. So there's a very clear picture as soon as you log in of what's happened and what do you need to do. In terms of the sort of legacy data, so on here, if I was to select on your appraisal, as it shows, I can see a history of all the appraisals that I've undertaken, and I can access them as PDFs. I can go to the portfolio of evidence. I can see where the information is. In terms of what happens if you move from a different system to ours, that legacy data would be presented in this particular format, or depending on what system you're coming from, but as an offline appraisal. So that's all that means. That means it was not undertaken within this system. And this is also true of multi-source feedback. And I mention that because when we sell medical revalidation and appraisal, we provide multi-source feedback with it as well. So as you can see, in terms of user engagement, the ability for things to be intuitive, it's very straightforward. A few other things about the intuitive nature of it and also configurability. I'll quickly just take you to our portfolio. In fact, I'll go to this one. Take you to our portfolio, which essentially, as with all of our modules, all of the main areas of the process, so within this, gathering evidence in your portfolio and the appraisal form, are all on one page. So there, although I've got a number of tabs open, that's purely because I've got different demonstration sites open for ease of use for this webinar, but everything will be contained in one page. So structurally, just to give you a quick overview, once you've learned the structure of this, which will take about 30 seconds, you know how to utilize our portfolio system forevermore. And the structure is very simple. You have a title, you have guidance, you have the ability to upload evidence, to comment on that evidence, and add private notes. Now, wherever I go to in this system, so if I select something different, let's go into CPD, summary, what you'll notice is title changes, the guidance changes, but the structure remains exactly the same. So here I can add evidence, here I can comment, and here I can have private notes. Just briefly, in terms of the intuitive nature of the system as well, there are a couple of features on this that I just wanted to talk about in terms of evidence. So when adding evidence, it's very simple. You can either add evidence as you would if you were attaching a document to an email. So when you go into attach documents, you can just browse and find it. But again, for ease of use, you can actually email evidence to the system on one day and then go in a few days later and add it to a particular section. The other area here is about how long you keep evidence for. We know that some things will be based on just one appraisal round. Some things may span a couple of years if it's a training course, for example, and some may very well, there's our chat system, I'll talk about that shortly, and some may span longer. So for example, multi-source feedback will last 5 years, and you can make sure that evidence is retained in your portfolio for any period of time. So if you know it's a one-off thing, you don't select anything, and after 12 months it will not appear in your next appraisal. If it's a 2-year thing, you can just keep it for your next appraisal and you don't have to duplicate re-uploading it. And then finally, if it's something like MSF that will last over 5 years, you can actually give it a date 5 years in the future, and then it will appear as you go on. Evidence is all accessible as well. So once you've uploaded something, you can review it, you can open it again, or you can edit or change it within that. So learning the structure of our portfolio is really key. having with regards to the structure, however, everything you see on the left-hand side where it says contents, instructions, scope of work is configurable. And the reason why we do this is to ensure that if different individual doctors or groups of doctors have different evidential requirements for their role, this system can reflect that. So it can suggest to individuals that they need evidence that other people may not need. And I suppose the best example of this is educational supervisors. In a lot of trusts, there are a number of people that are educational supervisors, and as such, they can go in and complete a section on educational supervision, and those that are not simply don't get asked to do so. And just so you can see, this is our old demo site. It's a completely different portfolio. Now, that may seem a little bit scary, but we've got templates, we've done this over 11 years. We know how to ensure that trusts and healthcare organisations can utilise this in the best way. And this is an example, medical educator's appraisal. So if I'm a medical educator, this is the sort of evidence that I would be required to gather. If I wasn't, then I just would simply not see it. So it's very straightforward, it's very easy to use. Once you understand the structure of it, then essentially you know how to utilize the system. There are a couple of other sections in here, so you can store all of your old documents on here. You can access them, you can search for them, you can filter them by year. So you have a nice document store. There is no limits on file sizes or document types. And then, as I've already shown you before, the new appraisal form as is in here, and the ability to submit information to appraisers quickly. There's lots of notifications to make sure that that those involved in the process, so their appraisers get to see what's happening, are prompted when they need to undertake different actions within the system. So that gives you a little bit of an idea in terms of some of the key issues that we've had when we've spoken to people. The intuitive design, step-by-step guide, visibility of progress, historical data, configurability and sign-off. As you can see, they're all there. So moving on into the next sort of section of this in terms of issues and solutions, and this is obviously quite a big one that we hear about quite a lot from sort of key administrators and key stakeholders. So having a system that is really well engaged with by your end users is obviously really important, because without that you don't get the data that you require. But what you then are able to do with that data in the background is also key, because if people are undertaking a process, it should be meaningful. And again, these are some of the things that we hear about quite often as we're going through our discovery period. Complex manual reporting, which is always odd that people talk to us about the fact they have to manually report on various things. User management, again, access to historical data. Reminders is a big one, making sure people are aware of what they've got to do and how that information is supplied to them. Separation of data. This is really where we have trusts that utilise our system for other groups. So we've got physician associates that use our systems now. For the longest time in King's, they've had a few hundred dentists on their system, and lots of people are concerned about, well, if you've got those, how's that going to reflect in things like our AOA? We can separate that data. It's very simple. Another one recently that we've had is about being able to see what the doctor sees. Well, our administrators, given the right access, can see exactly what the doctors see, and making notes, something as simple as being able to add notes in terms of the administration side of things. So let's go and have a look at the admin section on here. Just bringing up. So just to cover off a few of those things, I'll start with the user management. So where I think we differ, and hopefully in a very positive way, is we don't need to get involved in the user management side in terms of if you want to add a new user, you can do it. You don't need to ask us to do it. We're not going to invoice you for every individual that you start to add. We actually operate something called a 10% tolerance. So let's say you had 500 doctors. Within the first year, if you add another 50, you won't hear a peep out of us. We won't be sending you an invoice. We won't have to sort of extend each sort of the 500 licenses to 501, 502. You can simply get on and add users as you wish. If it goes over the 10% tolerance, then we'll simply have a conversation, but we will not stop you from adding new users. Within the user management, again, there's a lot that you can do. Now, we are on the side of making sure that the system is really robust. What you may find is as you utilize the system, there's certain areas that you rely on more than others, but there is loads of information that you'll see in the user management. And our aim is to make the system really autonomous for you, but we're always there to support. In terms of the manual reporting side of things, that really should not be an issue or something people have to be concerned about when utilizing this system. So we have a number of already set up reports around appraisal, compliance, and the same for revalidation. And just to give you sort of an idea of that, I'll open one up. So this is a typical view. Gives you an idea of how many people are compliant, how many are compliant but actually have an upcoming renewal, and how many are non-compliant. And with all of our reports, this information will start at the top level that you select, whether that's organizational, directorate, or division, team, speciality, and allow you to drill down to the individual. So you can see here, this is all appraisal client compliance. I do have the opportunity to filter, and it's quite a neat little thing for administrators in terms of this. If I want to engage with those that are compliant with an upcoming renewal, I can click on this button and it will return me that there's 45 amber medics. So all of these people are due to renew their appraisal. But what's more, outside of the automatic reminders, which I will show in a second, you can email that particular group and give them a gentle reminder outside of those automatic reminders. And as I mentioned, all of these reports are broken down for you, so they will reflect your hierarchical structure, but within that I can continually drill down to see information all the way down to the individual within that particular group, team, directorate. So there's loads of reports. One of the biggest ones we hear about all the time is the AOA report, and what a bugbear it is to have to manually go away and put information in Excel spreadsheets and work out who goes where and the categorization of different individuals. Well, our system obviously comes prepared for that. So we already have AOA reports, and that's the amount of time it currently takes. It gives you all of your key information here, but then it also breaks that information down. So as with all of our reports, you can go in and you can drill down into an individual and have a look in more detail about their history and any information that relates to them, whether they've had any extensions or exemptions. So in terms of the complex manual reporting, that doesn't exist here. You can take the information out of the system, and that's more so that you can utilize that information to work with other systems that may rely on that data. I won't go through every section on here, as I say, because we simply don't have time in a webinar, but if there is anything that you see as we're going through this that you'd like to explore more, feel free to ask at the end, or we can arrange something in a bit more detail. But I did want to show you the reminders side of things, because that's important. So, and it's one of the key issues. So we have appraisal reminders, and we also have recommendation reminders. Now, what's useful about these is a number of things. One, you can control the frequency and the content of these reminders, and there are templates that exist in it, but also that it will tell you when things have been scheduled to go out, and it will tell you when things have gone out. So you are able to audit the reminder side of things as well, and that's incredibly useful. So having a mixture between using the filters and emailing a group and the automatic reminders means that you don't get sort of an overload of SARD emails, which, as we all know, people will start to ignore emails if they come too frequently from the same provider. In terms of making notes, I mentioned that was something that, it seems simple, is something that is not always, oh, sorry, pick the wrong one. It is not always available. When you select a user in here, there's always the opportunity to add comment to it. So you always have that ability. There's always also the ability for you to be able to see what an individual doctor is currently doing from a doctor's perspective as well. So you can actually go in and start to look at the actual appraisal from their point of view, which again is something that we hear about a lot. We can't see what our end users are using, so we don't always understand. With our system, 100% you can go in and have a look and see exactly what's happening. It is role-based access. So within this, when you're setting up new users, you're able to give them different, if they're administrators, you can give them different access to different things. And again, we work with you to ensure that the right access is given to the right people. So that gives you a bit of a flavour in terms of the sort of comprehensive nature of our administration portal, which is really important because you need to be able to manage that data and the information that is supplied. So the next area is around support. Again, these are not all from the same people. There's obviously various people we talk to, but one of the areas that we hear most about is a lack of support. That there's a lack of ownership by the supplier when problems sort of are expressed to them about the system, long waits, unknown response time, inability to actually be able to talk to someone within the company. We hear often that sort of recognition of an issue can take a long time. And then finally on this sort of version release updates that we'll talk about. This, as I mentioned before, is one of our key pillars around support. Because of the intuitive design of our system, we don't have that many support team members, but we do have over 50,000 users. And all of those users have direct frictionless access to our support team, which means via online chat or telephone support, they can contact us whenever they're using the system. It may be there's a simple question they've got, maybe doing something complicated. In terms of a response, so an acknowledgement of your problem, if it comes through online chat, that's a matter of seconds, not days or weeks, literally seconds. In terms of how long it takes to complete a query process, that's obviously dependent on what it is. Some of them will take minutes, as you saw from the testimonial we had, 7 minutes from initial email to completion. Some may take longer. But the most important thing is we acknowledge an issue, we record that issue, and then we get to work on resolving that issue. If we know it's going to take a period of time, then we'll make sure that is communicated to you. I can't overemphasize enough how important support is to any system, because you'll have users of different abilities. What you don't want is a very long sort of difficult process for them to get to the point that they are, to the point that they need to be. And if that's, I need to know how to add a piece of evidence because I'm not too great with computers, then it's really useful to have someone either at the end of the telephone or online chat. There's lots of other sort of support elements to what we do as well, and we certainly work in some complicated processes, and we've got a really great team. In terms of the other side of support, it's about sort of version release. So I mentioned before, very briefly, that we do continuous development of our system. So often what we find is if people want a new feature or something changing, they have to go through a very long process of submitting it to the supplier. The supplier then pulls in all of the requests that they get from lots of different trusts that they work with, and they prioritize them in terms of, oh, lots of people have asked for this, and then they will look to put them in one of their next version releases. With our system and how we're set up, every client has their own tenant, and that means that we can actually make changes to that tenant that don't necessarily affect any other tenants. But moreover, we have an internal triage process. So this information, in most cases, will go through sort of the support route. That there is a feature that's required that may be very localized to a particular trust. Megan and her team will take that via triage to our development team, work out the priorities of things, be completely honest and upfront about what we can do and what we can't do. And then again, that goes on something called Pivotal Tracker, and we get to work in working on those features. But as you can see from this admin page, we do lots of continuous development. This is not something that we talk about, but we don't do. We demonstrably ensure that we continue to update, maintain, and add features where they're really useful for our clients. So support is key to what we do. And as I say, that's more of a service than the system. So how we operate is not just providing you with the functionality, it's providing you with something that upholds that by ensuring your users and your key stakeholders have access to people that can help them when they need it. System evolution, future-proofing. I hope we've already demonstrated at the start of this that when something new comes in, like the new mag form or the under notice period, that we're quick to react. But future-proofing for us is about ensuring that we're agile, that we can react to anything that's coming sort of down the pipe that needs changing. The other thing about future-proofing for us, which relates to support, is we have as much as 50,000 plus users and stakeholders have direct access to us for support. We have direct access to feedback, so we know when things are coming. We know when things are going to be changed because we're told very early, and it allows us to work with our partners to make sure that the system is up to date and it's relevant. But future-proofing is not about a roadmap, because sometimes the future is very difficult to see. Things will change quite quickly. It's about, as I mentioned before, being agile. We have our own development team in-house, we have our own support team in-house, and they work hand in hand to make sure that our systems are relevant, that when things change, we can react very quickly. So, simple transition. This is generally one of the biggest barriers people talk about when it comes to a new system. So even if your system ticks all the right boxes and you feel it's better than the other one, it's got all the functionality, all of the support, one of the biggest concerns is the actual transition. What's going to happen to my data? How are people going to react when we change? Various other concerns that they have. We obviously in this marketplace have heard good stories and some bad stories about how transitions have gone. For us, and one of the reasons why I mentioned the 94% retention rate earlier, the transition for our system is a positive one. We try to make sure that it runs as smoothly and pain-free as possible. We don't try to overload ourselves with trying to do too many implementations in one go, because that's very dangerous. We treat each new client the same way as any other new client, which is to give them sort of the time, the tools to be able to ensure that that transition is sort of simple and easy. And in order to do that, we have a very sort of simple 3-stage process that we undertake. Obviously, there's a pre-implementation, the contractual side of things, getting the purchase order and the invoices. Well, we do that outside of sort of the support and the implementation team. So that's something myself and Chris, who's also on this call, will deal with. Then it comes to the implementation proper. So we have, in terms of that, not only a system now that is there to sort of go through the process, but we have Megan, who's our Director of Customer Services. We also have a Senior Technical Project Manager, that everyone sort of gets involved in the bits that are relevant, from the first meeting to how data is migrated. We're 11 years old now. We've never lost data, and we've been moving a system provider. In some cases, or in one case, we actually moved 3 system providers to us on the same day from one trust who had actually merged 3 other organizations. So we're used to the complexities of it, but we've done it so often that we're also very very good at ensuring that it's completed on time and that all the data is safe and secure. Other sections of implementation, making sure the system is configured in the right way. Now, there are some levels of configuration that we do in terms of implementation, but there is the opportunity later on to configure other areas. We try to make sure that we keep it very simple in the first instance. There is training for system administrators. I mentioned it was comprehensive in terms of the reporting side of things. We are there to hold administrators' hands in terms of both training, but also in terms of ongoing support. At that point, the system will go live, and then we'll move into the final stage, which is the post-implementation, where system checks, customer support, feature requests, as I've talked about, which go through triage, come through, and system maintenance. So our commitment is from the point that we start our discovery sessions with any potential client through to the contract, and then ongoing through to system use. We're always there. We want to make sure that you are as autonomous as possible, but we will always be in the background for you if you need us. I suppose the best thing to do is to wrap up then and say thank you very much for attending the webinar, and for those who are watching at a later date, as I mentioned, please reach out if you want any more details. Yeah, I hope everyone found it informative and useful, and thank you very much, everybody.